Welcome back to the Ref Show. Andy Haines gets a big mention in this part of the programme because some achievement this, he's managed to alienate the whole city of Sheffield in the space of 4 days, upsetting Sheffield Wednesday supporters and then Sheffield United supporters as well. We must reflect on that. But before we do all that, and by the way, there were some excellent performances from Championship referees, only right that they should take a bow in this half of the programme as well. You've seen a couple of them, Keith. Let's wrap up the Premier League with a couple of games. Mike Dean's game, Crystal Palace defeat 1-0 at Leicester. My word, Jamie Vardy again, you know, terrific. Zaha was cautioned for diving in that game. Right or wrong? He would appear to have previous, so I think there was some applause going on when he got cautioned. What did you think?
Well, this is the difficulty that faces the referee, because he's done his own work, he understands the players, and there's no doubt that this player goes to ground very easily. And on this occasion, Mike's bought the simulation act, when in fact, when you review DVD, which again is not open to Mike, point that I make regularly about the use of video ref, is clearly a penalty kick. So they should have had a penalty. He cautioned incorrectly, Zaha.
But he's getting punished for his history there, isn't he? Zaha?
Yes, he is. And credit to the referee if he has done his homework, but you can't go into a game prejudging.
No.
That's what you can't do.
Absolutely.
Do your homework, by all means. You can use your homework in many ways to help cajole a player.
Some would say a poetic justice about it.
Yeah, some would say that, but it's a wrong decision. So there's no justice. You know, justice hasn't been done. You've got to be very careful when cautioning a player for simulation, because you are effectively saying you're a cheat. Yeah. And he did not cheat.
Absolutely spot on. No question.
Let's move on to the Emirates. Arsenal 2, Everton 1. This was a relatively rare Premier League appearance for Lee Mason. And it went well for him.
Yes, it did, yeah. Yeah, and another big call by Lee towards the end of the game, and a good goal. Well done, Lee.
This was Gareth Barry sent off. There were some quibbles in some quarters by the fact that the second yellow card was in stoppage time, but that he might have kind of managed it and swear. But it's not an option, is it?
No, I don't think there is. And in fairness, I mean, I was one that said last year I thought Lee had seen his career and it was over and he'd be better off refereeing at championship level. But in fairness, on this occasion, I thought he'd put more effort in, physically, around the field, got close to the action. His decision-making was more accurate. As a result, the actions that he took were correct.
Mike Jones is another referee that you've remarked on an improvement this season, and he handled a big Yorkshire derby, Sheffield Wednesday winning at Rotherham. We'll talk about that, but we have to, first of all, discuss Andy Haines, who's from Tyne and Wear. He's around about 50 years of age, I think, so one of the older referees. And we only mentioned because of this distinction, if you can call it that, of having refereed Sheffield Wednesday in a goalless draw at QPR, where, and I've seen the replays here, there should have been a red card.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And a penalty.
Yes.
QPR should have had a man sent off.
Correct. It was a nailed-on penalty kick.
And for denying a scoring opportunity.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
then Wednesday should have had a penalty.
Yeah.
And then moving on, Sheffield United supporters were then in a state of trepidation because he went on to Bramall Lane 4 days later and oversaw their 2-1 home defeat to Millwall. And what struck me is Nigel Adkins. I think he's really a respecter of referees. No track record. He was very critical.
Well, it's surprising because he has a reputation for being a very honest and fair guy in terms of refereeing and supports refereeing. I mean, I listened to some of the game on local radio, where I always like Keith Edwards' sort of, if you like, honesty and his overview. And of course, he was critical as well. And he doesn't do that every week. So I knew straight away from what I was hearing that there was something wrong with the referee's performance.
Apparently, they were claiming Sheffield United, probably with good justification, there were clear fouls in the build-up to both Millwall's goals. Nigel Adkins says the officials weren't up to the standards that he and others are looking for. And Billy Sharp, United striker, actually called the referee pathetic. Now, let's not bury him because people can have a bad week. But where does this leave Andy Haines after 2 back-to-back displays like that, do you think?
You see, that's a great question. What do we do with Andy Haines now? Because had it been a Premier League game, the obvious course of action is to just move him out of the limelight a bit. But he's moved down to League One as it is. Do we take him out altogether? If so, what's that going to do to his confidence? Is it better to throw him straight back in again and say, you've fallen off your bike, get back on it and pedal harder? It's a great question.
Whichever club he gets, or clubs he gets next, are going to look and say, well, why have we got this guy?
And the spotlight's going to be right on him.
What would you do, Keith?
Well, I think, first of all, it exposes this lack of care about the appointment process that appears to be going on. For me, right, the ultimate thing, which would be to move him off the game, having had a poor game, Sheffield, involving a Sheffield club.
He'd already been selected.
Yeah, I would have said, right, okay, he's not going to have a Sheffield club for a period of time, and therefore I'd move the appointment. And I think sometimes there's that lack of thought, the lack of thought in terms of fitting the match officials and the importance of that to the games that are involved and not overexposing. It's one of the reasons why you've got to be very careful with referees who sit close to London. There's very few of them, as we know. But, you know, they're on the doorstep. It's a little bit like, you know, the comments we've made about Andy Taylor refereeing at Manchester United. If that goes belly up big time, the spectators are on his doorstep, and some of those spectators can be a bit naughty.
There's a geographical imbalance, and we'll discuss that right at the end of the show. Before we do that, Mike Jones handled South Yorkshire Derby, Sheffield Wednesday's winner at Rotherham, which...
Try not to be biased, because obviously being a Wednesdayite, as most people know, I thought, I watched on TV, I thought he handled the game really well. He's you know, there seems to be less pressure when Premier League referees drop down into the Championship because they've got the experience. And this is the big difficulty that PGMOL have in the Madley situation. A referee with a limited amount of experience, and they're trying to accelerate him through into the bigger games, and sometimes that doesn't pay. You know, Madley has got all the foundation of being a top-class referee, and guess what? In a month's time or 2 months' time, they'll be saying he's an international referee, and he will have the belief that he's an international referee, and that gives him further exposure, because when you're carrying a white badge that says FIFA, the expectation is you don't get anything wrong.
Yeah, well, we'll see what happens there. Keith Stroud, big tip of the hat to Keith. Last week we reported on how he was clattered by a Hull City player at Hillsborough. It looked quite badly hurt, didn't he? He picks himself up off the floor. Following week, he gets the Lancashire hot pot, a real hot potato. I was at this game, Blackburn and Burnley, and I thought he refereed it very well.
Quite literally picked himself up off the floor and literally went straight back into the kitchen and did a great job as well. 2 big penalty calls. Right where he needed to be to make both calls as well. So hats off, Stroud.
He seemed to be well in tune with the mood, the temperature of the game throughout, and kept it going. So
he's one that needs to be pulled into the Premier League.
Yeah, you've said this.
Given a few games.
Well done, Keith Stroud. Also, you've seen Scott Duncan and Carl Boyson, just before we close the show with that talking point about the geography. You've seen both of those at Barnsley.
I did, funnily enough. I mean, Barnsley are terrible. I hate to say that. I'm not a Barnsley fan, of course, but it was pretty hard to take what was being played in front of me. I thought Scott Duncan kept the game flowing, kept out of it, managed it extremely well. Carl Boyson, when he came onto the field, I thought, wow, he's lost a bit of weight, which he has. The benefit of that was his movement and positioning around the field of play, which I thought was exemplary. His quality of decision-making, top draw. He had 2 very good assistant referees. And I was really impressed. So much so, for the first time in several months, I decided to drop my former manager, if you like, the guy who's in charge at the national list level, David Allison, a note saying, hey, this is a guy that's really refereed well today. Praise where it's due.
Yeah, some pats on the back there. Finally, we perhaps haven't got time to go into detail, but we will on a future occasion. I know you've had correspondence from one of our viewers and person who reads the site, Kevin Downton. Thank you, Kevin, for raising this point about why Premier League referees are predominantly from the north of England. It means that they often referee clubs in their locality. This is correct, isn't it, Keith?
Absolutely. I mean, there's no doubt the highest percentage are from the north. And it does present problems because, you know, you throw a referee too close to the city of where he lives, that can present off-field problems for them if things turn a little bit south.
But we've just been praising Keith Stroud. You know, not only is he refereeing well enough to be brought back into the select group fold and the Premier League fold, he lives in the south.
Yes, bring him on.
Bring him in.
He's had to toddle all the way up to Hillsborough and to Ewood Park. He's doing some miles off the pitch as well as on, isn't he?
I think it's a pity because when you look at the past, you know, you had some outstanding referees: Roger Milford, Bristol; Steve Dunn, Bristol. You know, Paul Durkin, probably the best.
Yeah, Graham
from the south. Graham from the south.
We'll look in future with more time as what can perhaps be done about this. But meantime, thank you to Glenn, thank you to Keith, thank you to you for watching. Don't forget, we're here to discuss any questions and queries you have. YouAreTheRef.com, and we'll see you for another Ref Show next week. Bye.